Welcome to the Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Bender Bending Rodriguez and his shiny metal ass. Let's dim the lights, and Bender, dim your shiny metal ass.
Welcome everybody to the Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Misfire. Watch the show that'll have you saying, "Excuse me, seriously, please, and thank you." Catch Misfire Thursdays at 8, 7 Central. Welcome everybody to the Pestle. I am Wes.
And I'm Todd.
And we are doing it a little differently this week in all kinds of ways. Todd is on location at his OG house. He's back in Austin, which I believe means a movie night at least once this week. And glad to have you around. I know we have a lot to cover. The basic format of the show is we're filmmakers and we like to analyze and look at films to see what we can, glean, what makes a good movie good and what makes a bad movie worse. All that said and out of the way, what are we covering today, man?
Yeah, today we're covering The Hurt Locker. I'm sitting outside here in beautiful Austin. Just got in last night. It's great to be back for a little while and doing this remotely, so I know the sound quality isn't as good. Apologize for that. I blame Apple. USB connections.
And right after a whole episode where we discuss how important sound quality is.
Exactly. You know what? This is important I wanted to hit it home. I wanted to really hit home about if you don't have good sound quality, this is the shite you get.
You're a
Absolutely.
true.
So if you haven't seen The Hurt Locker, please pause this episode, go watch it. There's spoilers all over the place.
Absolutely. We'll look at a few things. We'll touch on some of the cinematography, camera work, transitions or lack thereof. We'll also dive into some of the story and writing, the opening scene, what's in the title, and some other stuff. And we'll also have an interview with an Army veteran, a brother of the pod, Justin. And so, yeah, we'll hear what he has to say about, the film and being a soldier and who knows what else, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. During the Iraq War, an Army sergeant assigned to a bomb squad is put at odds with his squad mates due to his maverick way of handling his work. Directed by Kathryn Bigelow, screenplay by Boal, cinematography by Ackroyd, starring Jeremy Renner as Sergeant Will James, Anthony Mackie as Sergeant Sanborn, Brian Geraghty as Specialist Eldridge, Guy Pearce as Sergeant Thompson, and Ralph Fiennes as Contractor Team Leader.
Rafe Fiennes. It's him again.
And Rafe Fiennes as Contractor Team Leader.
What do you got here?
عندي 4 أطفال.
He has 4 children.
Shit.
خلصني بسرعة.
And Sanborn, we got a timer. We got a lot of wires, man. I'm gonna need a little help on this.
Roger that. Tell me what you need.
The bolt cutters. But you gotta get down here in 2 minutes. We're all fucked.
Roger that. I'll be there in 30 seconds.
بسرعة الله يخليك. أنا صاحب عائلة.
He says, please, I have a family.
بسرعة بس بسرعة. أنا صاحب عائلة الله يخليك.
I know. Just
بسرعة.
it's okay. You're all right. You're all right.
الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. يا رب. يا رب.
Please don't leave me.
يا رب. يا رب.
You weren't fucking kidding.
Nope. What's this made out of?
بسرعة.
Oh, man. That's case hardened steel.
Shit.
What's our time?
We got 2 minutes.
بسرعة الله يخليك.
We're gonna need a torch to get this off.
Well, we don't have one of those in the fucking truck, man. He's a dead man.
Hold on, let me think. Let me think.
بسرعة الله
Let's
يخليك.
handle this. We're gonna have. It's okay. We got this.
قول لي بسرعة.
Just shh. Okay.
خلصني.
Let me look at the back.
يا رب.
It's just,
يا رب.
we don't got enough time, Sanborn. We don't have enough time. I just
راح
gotta
تنفجر.
get these
راح
bolts
تنفجر.
off.
No. We had a minute and a half, man. We got to get out of here.
I'll handle this. Just go.
Look, Will,
Come on, man. I'm right behind you. Just go.
Fuck him. Come on.
Sanborn, I got the suit. Just go.
James.
Sanborn, you have 45 seconds. You have 45 seconds, Sanborn. Leave.
He's a fucking dead man, Will.
Go!
Everybody get back!
Hang on! We got one.
Go! Get back! Get back! Buddy, go!
Can't. There's too many locks. There's too many. I can't do it. I can't get it off. I'm sorry, okay? You understand? I'm sorry. You hear me? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Get down now! Get down! Everybody down! Everybody stay down! Stay down!
أشهد أن لا إله
Brutal scene, obviously. That's intense.
Wow.
And it makes it, I think, all the more intense when you realize, I mean, that's the first person we've actually seen. I don't know, maybe not the first, but we only see a couple people die in the film from an explosion. The opening, and then about midway, we have the I don't know, the corporal, who is just naive to the whole scenario. And then him,
Right.
and that is like the first Iraqi that we see who dies in an explosion. Like mostly it's been Americans up to this point, and then you have all the movement at the end, right, where everyone's just trying to scramble for cover, and then there's just silence right before the explosion, and you hear him kind of praying. Like it's a really intense scene, and just an interesting way to end the movie, because that kind of is our penultimate scene before we, see him go home and everything. But how are you, for one, are you, yeah, maybe so. I'd rather have echo than like someone building a house in the background. That's typical production, right? Like, oh, y'all are doing something where you're recording? Yeah. Cue the planes. Like, let's have a carnival of, of planes. Yeah, that looks good. That looks good. Yeah. Yeah. So for one, are you, do you go for war films in general? And then like, does Hurt Locker, like, is this your kind of movie?
Yeah, this is it's incredible. And it's incredible because of a lot of reasons. Jeremy Renner is perfect in this film. In fact, in all the movies that I've seen him do, I feel like he's more perfect for this film than any other. And it's my favorite performance of his by far. It was the first time I'd ever seen anything that Kathryn had done, Kathryn Bigelow, and it really opened my eyes. Yeah, I hadn't seen any of her work.
That's not true. There's no way that's true.
Well, not that I knew of.
Oh, gotcha.
I didn't notice. I didn't like. I might have seen it, but I didn't notice. But this was her first film that I looked at and I said, "Who did this? This is incredible." And it's incredible because of so many reasons. But to your point, we don't see it's a war movie, but we don't see a ton of people die. But it is about people dying, but it's more about the stress of the experience of it, right? Like the stress of this thing could explode, and either this one person or a lot of people could die if this guy does it wrong. And that's felt the entire film, and it's pretty incredible how. It's just a great example of a director needing a vision in order to make the feeling come across, because you can get coverage for days in something like this, and you could edit it together, pretty well. But unless she had a vision from the beginning, it's really hard to do both of those things in congruence, right? To shoot for the edit, like you talk about all the time on the podcast. And I feel like she knew going in just exactly what she wanted, even if it turned out looking different than in her head, she knew what the feeling was that she wanted. And Anthony Mackie is fantastic in his role too. The lines he delivers, I guess it was after this, when they're in the Humvee and he's talking about wanting a son now, you know, because he wasn't before. He didn't want any kids. And then saying he wanted a son and everything were fantastic, right? I mean, he's a great actor and I've loved everything he's done. But, you know, it's so funny. So many actors, you think, oh, they're really good or he's really good. But really, you know, whether or not you see them as a fantastic actor comes down to a line here or a line there in a single movie. I mean, look at Robin Williams. Nobody denies that Robin Williams is a fantastic actor in everything he does pretty much, or did. But, you know, the monologue on the bench in Good Will Hunting, no one will ever forget that. It's like, but it's one scene, you know? And I feel like that was a great scene for Anthony Mackie. And it was really, the script itself was really well written for all the characters. I forget his name, but the sergeant or the kid who's scared all the time.
Eldridge. Yeah.
Eldridge. Yeah. Perfect casting. The writing for him was great. Giving him the relationship with the therapist is perfect because he's scared to be there. You know, why would Mackie's character need to talk to the therapist? I mean, he definitely should and does, but we don't need to see that. We need to see Eldridge talking to him. And then, you know, like it is really great writing, really great. I mean, cinematography is fantastic as well. I mean, we talk a lot about handheld versus, you know, locked off and everything. And I feel like, you know, you have some movies like Born Identity and everything where, you know, they're shot in a way that's handheld in order to like, to make it feel very cutty, very like action packed. And this wasn't like that, but it was handheld to make it feel action packed. You know, so we have low shots that are handheld and moving around while he's just by himself in a car trying to take the radio out of the deck of the car, and like there's no action there, right? It's just him pulling slowly this radio, but because it's handheld, we feel like we shouldn't be there. We're a fly on the wall, like it's dangerous. This is, or we're feeling what he's feeling a little bit better. And, you know, obviously that comes down to cinematography and it was amazing, but Kathryn's vision from the start is just absolutely fantastic and flawless. I watched it again for the third time and like it was my first. It's just fantastic. I don't know. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, it's funny. And I didn't realize it until after we'd already programmed it. But we did this right after Aliens, like we had the pod episode in between. But you know, she and James Cameron were married for a number of years. And so, I mean, no wonder they're both, you know, fantastic directors. But she kind of blew up on the scene, I guess, from Point Break. She directed Point Break, you know, back in Keanu Reeves' early days. Yeah. So she's a long time action director and like one of the greatest action directors, you know. And I think you're right, man. She does make this feel like there's a lot of heavy action, despite there not being a lot of heavy action in the traditional sense, right? There's not a ton of gunplay and, you know, people just dropping like flies left and right. It's not that kind of war film. It's a bit more cerebral than that. Even if they dial into the, you know, the tension of every single moment, there's a lot of cerebral stuff going on in here. And with that, like, I love it. I don't know that I've ever been able to put my finger on exactly why I love it. I know it's always spoke to me. This came out in 2008, even though it's set in 2004. And it's an easy time to kind of put this kind of film out. Like, you couldn't put this film out in 2004 when we were just invading Iraq because it was a very popular move at the time, you know. But you fast forward 4 years, you know, 5 years after the invasion, and suddenly the Iraq War is not popular. You know, we're done. We're tired of it. We're tired of seeing people going over there and the destruction, whatever. And so this becomes a much easier film to put out, even though, you know, it's not very judgmental, like on the surface anyway. Like it's not very heavy-handed and making a moral, you know, call about this is a good war, this is a bad war, or any of that. It's just kind of being. It just kind of lets the characters be, and you just sit with them, much the way that you were just talking about. Like we're in the car, we're just sitting with him, but we're anxious because of the camera movement, because of everything going on. And so when this came out, it was speaking to me on a level that I couldn't put my finger on. And I was glad it won Best Picture. It had some competition. Like this came out 2008. And so the 2009 awards, you know, there was a lot of heavy competition. Inglourious Bastards, District 9, Up in the Air, A Serious Man, and Education, Up, and a few others. And like those are really good competition. Inglourious Bastards alone is like, dang, like you beat that. And if, you know, Hurt Locker won the Best Picture for 2008. And so it's tough. It's there's a lot going on, but cinematography wise, like, yeah, a lot of zooming, a lot of panning and tilting around. Is very docu style, so it doesn't feel necessarily like a movie. It feels like they're just documenting the war. And all that camera movement and imprecision adds a grounded realism, right? We're in a war zone, so it should feel chaotic and unpredictable. But I love that there's no normal coverage, right? You have these none of these like wide establishing shots and, oh, there's a close up when something important needs to be emphasized, right? We're going to make sure we direct the viewer's attention. Don't forget this trigger or whatever. Like they don't do any of that. Instead, it's all mashed up, all mashed together, which heightens our experience as a viewer in trying to navigate the film language, right? All the normal cinema language that we know is gone, right? Much like the soldiers in Iraq, all the normal language that they're used to is gone. And so everyone's on their heels and trying to figure it out. And so they do a really good job of kind of placing us in their situation just through that. But shooting that style is intimidating, right? Loose camera work can be very tricky if you're not used to filming that way, because you have to be very comfortable. You have to commit to imperfect shots where you stray away from the subject, right? Like, oh, you know, normal cinematography, there's my main character. I'm going to put him right on whatever your framing guidelines are, the right third, you know, and he's not going to move. I'm going to track him perfectly through that. You're not doing none of that here, right? You're swinging the camera around and it looks like you don't know what you're doing and what we're supposed to be looking at. But it all edits together really, really nicely whenever you have the right editor for the project, which of course, you know, they do. And so you're zooming in and out, right? Some of it's planned, some of it's improvised. Like I can imagine it all looks completely improvised, but I guarantee maybe 80% of it is like very, very planned, where, you know, Kathryn Bigelow's talking to her, whether it's Barry Ackroyd, I don't know who's camera operating, but they both are probably talking to the cam op and they're like, hey, we're going to start this scene on a close up. And then whenever he delivers this line right afterwards, zoom out, like punch out really quick to get into a wide, or, you know, and now we're capturing the scene from this angle. Yeah. And she's watching on the monitor. Yeah. That was perfect. Next time, after you go to that wide, he's going to deliver this other line and then punch in on this other character, right? And we're going to get his reaction, so that you're trying to, as much as possible, get all this coverage chaotically within the frame in a way that feels fluent in this new language that they're developing. Like that takes a lot of work to make it look like it's not a lot of work. Like it's beautiful. Like it really is amazing. And I actually bought the lens that they used for most of this film, because most of this is shot in Super 16, which is, you know, a film language. Yeah, man. And it's beautiful. The texture, the grit and the grain really speaks to, you know, like the grittiness of war. And it makes you feel the heat of the day. And it just plays really well. And so most of it's shot on film. They do like a handful of slow-mo shots where I don't know what camera they were using. I would have thought a Phantom. I wonder if they have it in the specs. they just say an HD cam. I don't know. And so I really loved the look of the film. So I was like, I want that lens. And so I dropped like $5,000 last year, and bought it. Yeah. I'm hoping to shoot, a film on that lens. And so it's beautiful camera work, very like precisely laid out, even with its seemingly imprecise feel. And that just adds so much to, the viewer's experience and trying to catch up, right? Because you can't really blink too much in this film, even though there's a ton of edits. Edits usually encourage this kind of blinking nature for the viewer, but because of the language, the camera language, you are forcing the viewer to not blink so that they don't miss something. And that's a very intense feeling as a viewer, to feel like you can't look away lest you miss out on an important shot, because you don't know what's important and what's not important. Again, much like these characters, he doesn't know what's important, so he has to scan and look at everything, scan your sectors and whatnot. And so the other thing, camera language and editing wise, that I really liked is there are virtually no transitions in this film. Everything is hard cuts. It's very sudden. In between scenes, there's no transitioning, right? We don't just, oh man, we're done with that mission. Wide cut, establish army base, Baghdad. And now what are they doing here? Nope. We cut from a mission straight into what are they doing in their off hours, straight into another mission, straight into, a mission after that, straight into video gaming, right? It's just chaos and a lack of regiment and predictability. And I love that we're just constantly hard cutting in and out of things, because you don't know what's going to come next. Oh my God, we just left the suicide bomber. What are these kids doing on the car? Oh, we're in a grocery store. Like, what are we doing in a grocery store? Like, and you're just getting your bearings, and it feels very emotionally connected with what everyone's going through. With that in mind, let's see what my big brother has to say. We're going to get my brother Justin on the line. And so, and I don't know, get a boots on the ground perspective. I'm going to be an idiot for the next 20 minutes. So y'all are just going to have to get over it.
I love it.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right. So right now we are joined by my big brother, Justin. Hey man, thanks for joining the show.
Oh, no, thank you for having me.
Very cool. So a lot of places to start here, but just for my own edification, I don't know what you're like. You left the military as a sergeant, corporal, general master, Heidenreich. Like, that's all a thing, right?
Okay, so y'all watched the movie. Y'all saw Sergeant James. I left the same rank as Sergeant James, Sergeant First Class.
Okay, while we're still on that, again, for my own edification, you left as a sergeant first class.
Right.
Do you know what Trav left as?
Sergeant E5, if my memory serves correctly. So there's okay. So to set it up, you got Private E1, PV2, Private 2, PFC, Private First Class, Specialist, which is an E4, which was Eldridge in the movie, mm-hmm. right? He was a specialist. You could also have a corporal. A corporal is also an E4. Then you have E5 sergeant. You got staff sergeant, E6, sergeant first class. And then you got master sergeant or first sergeant. And then you got sergeant major.
Nice.
Okay.
So you outrank Trav then.
Oh yeah, I outrank Trav from jump.
Well, in that case, I want you to know we're all very proud of you, Trav. We're embarrassed. We talk about it all the time at all the family get-togethers. You embarrass us all.
But it was never about that. I don't know. Y'all can't see on the wall, but I got pictures of when Grandma and Grandpa Heidenreich, when they first got to get married, and Grandpa was in his dress uniform, and as a matter of fact, on my wall. So, it really starts there, and then, Grandpa Evans and some of his pictures, which I also got hanging on the wall behind me. And it was a trickle down, and that really served as the groundwork what really started in my heart, on that service to country. And it obviously was a trickle down from there. And then, growing up, then we heard Dad's stories about some of his stuff that he did. But I mean, then when you really reflect on it, in the way back machine, Grandma and Grandpa and all the stuff that we, when we go see their house and the stuff on their walls, and that was just a massive impact. And that was really where really all started. So.
Yeah. So how old were you when you joined up, enlisted, and how long did you serve?
So, I was in the Army delayed entry program for just under a year. So you have a year from the time you sign to ship out. And I actually, not too long ago, I was looking at my documentation. I did it in I had only like 2 or 3 weeks left. So just before the start of my senior year, and I was 18 at that time. When I shipped out, I had just turned 19. So that was June of 97. And then I retired after 20 years.
And how many tours did you go on? What does a tour qualify as? I don't, break out some of the terminology for me a little bit.
Okay. So I did one tour in the Middle East. And a tour is really, you did your time. Some folks, they have a year-long tour. Some units, they have very short tours, 3 months. Mine was a 4-month tour. And as I like to say, when I packed my bags, I didn't leave shit there, so there was nothing for me to go back for. So I never had to return. There are some, some of my brothers and sisters in arms, they did multiple tours, back to back to back to back. And when I rotated back, I was actually due to go to Fort Stewart, Georgia, before I went to recruiting duty. So if the cards had not been different, I'd have went to Fort Stewart, and I'd have been that guy that went right back to the sandbox.
And for our listeners, define what a tour is. How would you even define what qualifies as a tour?
Go where? Showing up.
To where?
Go to Iraq, Afghanistan, to any country. Okay, this is my definition. Okay, my definition: a tour of duty constitutes a deployment. All right. Now that not necessarily just the Middle East. All right. To any country. Really, any I won't even say any country. Just a theater of operation where there's danger. All right. That is a tour of duty. All right. However, in referencing this particular movie,
Sure.
It was Iraq, but really a tour, because the folks in the Navy, a tour for them is getting on ship, going out for however many months they're going out. That is considered a tour for a lot of those folks.
Because you were deployed to multiple countries, right? Where have you been stationed around the globe?
So my first tour duty.
Exactly.
Right?
That's why I was trying to get a little bit bigger of a definition.
Fair enough. So a tour of duty, really, it can, everybody will have their own different, it's also a turn of phrase, right? In the military, it's a turn of phrase. It goes back, once again, hitting the way back machine. If I had to take a guess, it was first used probably during the Vietnam War. But tour of duty was what they would, dictate as somebody's first turn in the Vietnam conflict, right? But it became a turn of phrase. All right. Oh, my first tour, my first enlistment, my first assignment, that sort of thing. But I guess it's in reference to how you're using it.
Sure.
Really, yeah. So that being said, my first tour, my first assignment was Panama. I went to Panama. I was there from January of 98 till June of 99. So right when everybody was truly being pushed out of the country, that's when I left. Even though we didn't hand the country over, I say hand the country over. That's probably poor choice of words. We didn't. The treaty that was signed. Okay, the treaty said that we were turning everything over back to the citizens of Panama. So that happened in December of 99, December 31st, 1999. Everybody shy of maybe just a handful of service members and dignitaries. Everybody was gone. I was part of that group. We'd all left out. Now, during my time there, I did a deployment to Venezuela. We were there for a few weeks as an exchange program, and then I did a 6-month deployment to Honduras, part of the counter drug mission. So we were there supporting like the special operations guys when they would go and they do their thing. We were there to be essentially keep the facility safe. Sometimes the military police, what I did, they would leave out on the helicopters, go help chop down the pot plants or whatever, and then secure the helicopter sites while the special operations guys did what they had to do.
Were you stationed in Korea?
I was. So after I came back from my vacation down in sunny Central and South America, I ended up in, just to kind of give you a point of reference, I ended up going to Fort Bliss, El Paso, and then from there I re-enlisted to go to Fort Hood, Texas, to be a part of the 1st Cav. And then that was, during my transition, that was right when 9/11 happened, just before I left Fort Bliss. It was kind of crazy because everybody went in lockdown. Nobody was moving and going anywhere. So for me to make that jump, it was only because I had already had orders in hand. The ball was in motion. They weren't going to stop it. And if I had to take a guess, is because you're going to 1st Cav and you're probably going to get spun up and shot out the gate anyway. So get you going there. So I got the 1st Cav and none of that happened. All right. So we didn't go anywhere. But while I was there, I did some interesting stuff. And then I re-enlisted and went to Korea. All right. The irony is 5 minutes after my re-enlistment, my commander walked out the door and he said, "Why'd you do that?" I said, "Well, sir, we ain't going nowhere. I'm going to go to a war that at least I can do some drinking at and have some good times while I'm waiting for it to happen." He goes, "Well, we just finally got our orders. We're going to the big show. We're going to Iraq." Oh, son of a bitch. Okay. Well, I guess I'll get there by way of Fort Stewart when I get back. So I get to Korea, and once again, life happens. And so one Saturday morning, my platoon sergeant, he's just getting ready to rotate back. I don't remember. I think he was going back to Fort Bragg or Campbell or wherever he was going. So
feel free to keep it high level. Don't get too far down in the weeds.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
So he's getting ready to rotate back, but I get a phone call saying, "Hey, ask me about my uniform sizes." I'm like, man, I've only heard that conversation like a handful of times. And each time I've heard that conversation, what are your uniform sizes? Immediately it followed by, what country are we going to? Okay. So I got that phone call. I ran back to the installation, and man, when you're talking a 1 mile hump going from a top of a high hill to the middle of downtown Busan, Korea, I come running in hot and sweaty, and I was like, what the hell's going on? Where are we going? Oh, we're going to Iraq. So that's how I ended up getting to that stage of my life. So Korea, Panama, Honduras, Venezuela. That's short
Nice.
answer. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Yeah. And so, okay. I assume, I know you well enough to know that you like war films. And how does Hurt Locker?
All right. I got my notes.
Oh, okay.
You're his brother.
Yeah.
You're with the notes.
So, okay, before you dive into that, one, do you like it as a general film before you start like picking on it, which is all too easy to do with Hollywood films?
Hey, look, okay. So as a film, absolutely enjoyed it. When the first time I saw it, I remember thinking, yeah, you know what? Not overall, not a bad film, even though like the nitpicky part of your mind goes, BS, okay, yeah, BS. You want to kind of pick it apart for the inaccuracies, but at the same time, there were some accuracies. All right, like just the way they showed certain things, like the terrain, the way that some people like how Sergeant James interacted with the little boy. There are people, soldiers would interact with local kids like that, build that rapport, build that friendship. And it wasn't just about building a friendship to gather information and all this other junk. People miss their kids, they miss interacting with the kid, being something normal, day-to-day day-to-day life. And watching the movie, that was my interpretation of it. He was just missing his son. He was just wanting to feel normal, just 5 minutes of normal decency. And that's so there were some things right on point, and then there were some things you're like, that is complete hogwash. So
yeah, what I guess what set off your BS detector? Like, oh, that would that would never happen, or the consequences of that would be just insane.
Okay, so the first EOD tech was in the bomb suit and just like, boom, he was gone, right? Let me tell you, first off, they use those, they really do, those little robots, absolutely use them, right? Mm-hmm. They use them, and a lot of times they will just blow stuff right in the spot. You know, they will absolutely, a lot of times, things just get detonated right where it's at. That's the end of it. I mean, they're not going to waste a whole lot of time, you know, going out unless there's going to cause mass casualties. That's the only reason that a lot of these guys will go in and defuse things. But they'll send the robot and they'll let the robot do as much as they can. All right. Beyond that, boom, detonate it. All right. Now, that guy, when he took off running, I'm here to tell you, I wore a dog bite suit. Okay. So I can tell you, as clunky as that is, man, it's hard to run it. Now, imagine having to wear that massive bomb suit. Now, I've known a few EOD techs in my time when I was still doing the military police thing, and they will tell you that suit is just heavy, heavy, heavy. All right. Now, some of this is just personal belief. Some of it is just memory serving old conversations. But when that dude took off running, he probably would have hit the ground at some point and just let the explosion pass over him. All right. Because the shrapnel alone, he would have known as a tech, that shrapnel is going to it's gonna flail and it's gonna shred my body.
So is that like the safer play if you know you can't get far away to hit the ground?
Absolutely. Because, well, I mean, in the grand scheme, I'd rather sacrifice my legs than my head, than my upper torso. But, you know, because as the explosion's going out, it's going out, and you know, very rarely is it going to go out along the flat plane. Right. So he had a better chance, and he would have known that. Yeah. Hit that ground and let it pass over as it's deflecting out.
So I wondered too if the explosion, like, just to play devil's advocate, because he also set his own C4 on top of the explosion. So I wonder if that also, you know, flushes it down as well.
You know, and that may have been one of those things in his mind, like, oh man, I just added more bang to this buck, you know. Yeah. You know, and you know what? And I had not considered that point. Yeah. I had not.
I don't know, me either. Like, I'm just spitballing here because I'm a jackass, but
you know, and there's actually, like, in some manuals, if you see an EOD tech running, like even the book says, keep up with them. That's like legit stuff. You see a tech running, you keep up with them. Drop what you're doing. You know, it's a running joke, but it's actually like part of their training. They see another fellow EOD tech running, they're going to try to keep up with that joker. They ain't going to ask questions.
End of lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing, you know, to go along picking apart this movie, the uniforms they were using, they were just introduced in that year, and everybody there had them already. Hogwash. Because when I got there the year after that movie was supposed to be taking place, and we were still wearing desert camouflage, not those ACUs. Okay. Right. And almost everybody had all the battle gear to match the uniform, except James. He was the one that had like the one-offs, but everybody else matched. I'm telling you, when I got there, we still had people that were mismatched, you know, a year later.
That's interesting. I mean, that's clearly intentional, because it's not like they couldn't afford.
Because the movie was made 4 years later after the fact, so they were just going with what they saw. So.
But I think it's interesting from the standpoint of on an emotional level. There's a difference between if you start looking at who dies and why they die. Maybe if you start trying to parse out the justice of life and death in this film, you can see that in a lot of ways, James is trying to blend in. He's trying to do the least amount of destruction in Iraq, right? And so maybe that's just one of those little subtle elements of, let's give him something that, you know, plays to his emotional intention of being a part of this country instead of being one of the people who are, you know, just because that Thompson in the opening, like you said, like the plan A and plan B and plan C is to detonate. It's not to go and prevent a detonation. And I think there's some logic film logic that I'll play with a little bit after we jump off of you, that I think they're playing with, and I never would have picked out the uniforms. So that's a really interesting, extra wrinkle that they're adding.
Oh yeah, well there's more.
Oh, I'm sure.
Wait, there's more. Yeah. So how he's always smoking in the Humvee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say I never did it. Not going to say I never did it. All right. But he does not realize what he's doing while he's doing it. There's a reason why you don't smoke in the Humvee. Where he's sitting, there are batteries underneath his behind that are flammable. So you don't smoke in the Humvee because it's minute.
Right.
But you can set those batteries off and create a massive hazard.
It's
right?
funny that the smoking is more dangerous than all the bullets.
Right. No, but like I said, I'm sure even in the filmmaking, they didn't realize the hazard they were creating. Right. A lot of people do it. Like I said, I myself was guilty of it. But I knew what I was doing. I knew that there was a hazard underneath my ass. He may not, Jeremy Renner may not realize that there, had he
or his character probably didn't care. Let's be
or
honest.
his character, absolutely. That could have absolutely been drop that thing right there. I don't care. Life is cheap. We're in the middle of a war zone. So, yeah. Oh, another thing. Speaking of smoke, the smoke between him and his team, where he said, "I'm creating a diversion." Not going to happen.
No.
All right, got it. Hollywood. He's building that conflict between him and Mackie. But yeah, man, that's bad mojo there. Bad things, because now you're not just creating that smoke screen between you and your Overwatch, but you've completely separated them. Anything happening to you, it's not just them finding the people between you and them, but anything happens, absolutely. By the time the smoke cleared, you could have been snatched up, and now you're being paraded around by insurgents. I mean, picked off, like any number of different things. So yeah, that's just once again, that's Hollywood at its finest. But
right, and I think they also do a decent job of like illuminating the audience to that fact, right? The frustration that it creates, and his other sergeant and specialist is just like a lot of anger, a lot of upset people going on there and then. Yeah.
I think that it was all about creating that conflict between them. And I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that.
Did you ever, really quickly, did you ever know anyone in the service that had an attitude like Renner's character?
Oh, hell yeah.
They just didn't care.
They just got a chip on their shoulder about everything. They absolutely. And it's not just about being when they were deployed. I mean, they're just people that but we see that in society everywhere. People just they think the world is their oyster, that whatever they're doing, they're the best at it, and nobody can tell them anything. And then that they create those elements of frustration, anger for other people. Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. I met tons of them. And have I ever been that guy? Probably to somebody else, but not intentionally. This guy, like he sets out to just piss his team off every chance he gets. To just whether I know it's intentional. Obviously, it's intentional. You don't do those things without making it so obvious. But
why?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this then, as a follow up. Why do you think? Like, I have ideas of why I think his character is operating this way. If you're just assuming that the world is the world and it's not just writers doing a bunch of random stuff to have a movie, but what do you think his internal logic as a character would be to act that way if there were intention behind it?
Oh, okay. So this real world, like me and him were in the same unit, and I see him doing this stuff. I don't think it's necessarily that after getting to know him, is it because he's an asshole? To use the phrase. It's probably because he's probably seen, judging by what he's doing, he's probably been a part of some things that he is obviously, because when he's picking apart the things, this is part of the UN, this is building blast, this, and I like this guy's work. he's obviously been through some very traumatic things. He's pushing people away intentionally, very much. He's pushing them away. I don't care about you. I don't want to know about you. And it's very obvious. He does not want to know about them. And you see it later on in the film where he's reach out to talk to the wife on the phone, doesn't say a word. When he rotates back, he's already justifying to his wife why he needs to go back. Just conversating with him. He can't connect. He can't connect even when he's talking to his own son. He's talking to the son, and he's trying to explain to his son, like, as you get older, the things that you love, you're not going to have as many of them. You're only going to get down to one or two things left in life by the time you get to my age. So he's trying to justify to himself as well as explain to others why he is the way he is. That he's just trying to. He doesn't want to feel the things that he feels anymore. He's pushing everybody away, and it's all intentional to the character. And that's
I think he feels bad about that too. That's a great moment to call out when he says, because then he says maybe just one or two things, and then he follows it up with and maybe just one. And it hurts him. You can tell that he's upset by, he wants to be there, but the only thing he can think of is getting back to Iraq and doing that. And that kind of leads me to a question that I've been wanting to ask you. And since I knew that Wes was going to have you on, I thought this is because I know a lot of people who have been in the military. I for one haven't, and I just have the utmost respect and admiration for everyone who chooses to serve. But you mentioned earlier about Iraq and the possibility of going before you went. Is there or has there ever been in your life, or like in most people who serves life, this desire to go and fight? Right? It just like Renner's character, he wants to be there. He doesn't necessarily want to be in a gunfight, but he wants to be on the edge.
Right.
Did that exist for you?
The best way I could ever explain to anyone. Did you play baseball, football, anything in high school?
Yeah, all that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The best way I could possibly explain to anyone is, imagine you practice all week, all season. You practice, and then Friday night comes and the coach says, "Hey, take a seat. You're not playing today." And then the next week, take a seat. You're not playing today. And then the next week, take a seat. Not playing today. Now imagine that happens for years. And then it's not because you're some John Wayne, got to thump your chest, none of that crap, but the time finally comes to practice your art and your craft, and then somebody says, take a seat. But there are other people doing the things that you've been trained to do, except now you got it in your mind. If somebody's going, but they're taking my place. And it's a very deep feeling, because that person may not ever get to see their parents, their brothers and sisters, their spouse, their children. Like it's very deep and conflicting feeling, because obviously the same can be said of you, but you have an opportunity. There may be an opportunity for you to reverse those roles. Mom doesn't listen to this shit, does she? Mom doesn't listen to your podcast?
She barely knows how to operate her phone. And so I've tried to get her to listen, and she's like, what's a podcast? I don't know why she's suddenly an old Jewish New Yorker, but that's what she sounds like.
So I asked that for this. All my deployments were voluntary. Like even the one to Iraq, I was given the option out. So I went, because if I didn't, we had two platoons. The platoon that was going, and then a secondary platoon, everybody trained up. So if anyone on this platoon did not go, there was another body that fell right in. So in quite literally in that situation, if I did not go, there was somebody there that was going to fall right into my slot. And I could not imagine the guilt in my heart if something happened to that individual while I was sitting back in Korea. So that the football analogy is the best way I can explain it. You train. You want to show, not just that it's not about showing the world, but you want to show yourself, hey, I can do what my training, what I've done. But then that if I don't go, somebody else is going to go in my place. So then you got that deep conflict, and that's so yes. Did I want to go? Yes, because I wanted to know what all that training, if it was what was it all that time worth invested in going to rifle ranges, going ruck marching and running and push-ups and sit-ups and land nav courses and leadership courses and blah 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 blah. Was all that time and effort and studying and the mentorship classes, was it all worth it? And then when push came to shove, then now it's a bigger image, a bigger picture. If I don't go, this guy's got to go. So yeah, did I want to go? Yes, but not because I want to be like thump my chest and go, oh, I'm a badass. But
you wanted to save someone else.
Yeah, so they would end up sending somebody else. But also, I had to know if all that training was worth a damn. Did all that time away from my parents, my brothers, at that time, my two different spouses, not at the same time, two different ones, but
We're
was all that
Mormon.
away from all them people? Was it time well spent, or was it all for nothing? So I had to know that for me.
And I assume, and just to tack on a follow-up question / statement, but I assume the family business of, uncles and our dad and grandparents and, they all, if not every one of them, most of them, served in times of war, or at least hot zones, and so that I assume played some influence too, just to be able to, have those conversations. Like when I come home, I know they're going to be able to relate, and maybe I'll have another connection with them that I haven't had before. Was that floating around in your head as well?
Believe it or not, everybody, I know everybody thinks, oh, well, just, because, oh, Dad went to Somalia. The one that I really wanted to be able to talk to was Grandpa and his Korea. How Korea, his thing with Korea, that was the one connection I really thought, well, when I get back, this will be the connection I can really build on. So that one meant more to me than any of the other conversations.
Yeah, and you mentioned our dad was in Somalia. Was there any significant moments that happened around the time that he was over there?
Significant moment.
Any other films that would tie in to?
Oh yeah, Black Hawk Down.
Yeah.
Are you talking about that or?
Yeah.
So I was at Fort Hood when that one came out, and but yeah, that happened. So that happened
like a month.
A month or so before he went there. Yeah.
Crazy. Nice. So you're. Oh, sorry, Todd. Did you have a?
No, I was just saying. Wow.
Yeah, that would be interesting to cover that film and hear him discuss some of the on the ground stuff happening in the wake of that event. So you were in the middle of, I don't know, picking on Kathryn Bigelow. Right. Continue.
So, okay, yes. You remember? So after he did the smoke and he walked there and he pulled up all those I guess they were like 108 or 155. Anyway, he pulled them all up, right? That's what they call a daisy chain. That's very real. Like that's a real thing. Yeah,
dude,
they would walk out.
That shot when he pulls it up. I mean, I remember that shot from the first time I saw the film and being like very visceral, and then seeing it again, I felt the exact same feeling, like I got a little verklempt in that moment, to be honest.
Oh yeah. So we had a mile-long daisy chain outside of our gate So it was a mile long. We had EOD come out there, and they told us, hey man, we're going to detonate this thing outside the gate. It's going to be a mile long worth of booms. We're like, say what? We had a daisy chain sitting right outside of our gate this whole time. Like, what the hell, man? And so, yeah, it was like, boom. You just kept hearing boom, 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 boom. Like, what the shit? So yeah, those are very much real.
Jeez.
They happen quite frequently.
Are they usually like small in a small area like that? Like, because he just pulled them up and they were all, you don't know. Okay.
Yeah, that could have been a Hollywood thing. I mean, I imagine there probably been times like that where they're all wired up together, for one mass boom. But they would chain them out, on main support routes, MSRs, so that way when convoys come through, they can just start, boom, do these IEDs on the side of roads and stuff. So yeah, that's a very real thing. During the movie, I felt like the sniper scene, I felt that was the real turning point for their relationship. When he gave him the juice box, and because he could very well just sucked it all down himself, but no, instead he was taking care of his man. He's like, hey man, so I felt that was the turning point for their relationship on that one, as well as for that kid, Eldridge, because relating back to, I mean, at the beginning, I think that was about as. I got some more picking apart here in a minute, but going back to the beginning of the movie, how going to the psychiatrist and talking with that guy, and it just like obviously it weighed very much on him. Going back to that sniper scene where the guy at the railroad tracks, obviously at that point that kid's like he's not going to repeat failures of the past, right? Mike clear to shoot, and he's like, oh yeah, do what you got to do, right? And so he saw the guy was armed. He's going to do what he's going to do, and he wasn't going to let the haunting of what happened weeks earlier keep playing through his mind. So that kind of closed the loop on that particular storyline. That kid was going to start moving forward. Now, speaking of moving forward, going back to that psychiatrist. Now, that there ain't no other way to say it. That dipshit. Okay, there are stupid people out there. They got a lot of education and they get rank and they spend all their time in those compounds, and then they decide that today's the day I'm going to go out. Right? Not saying that all these doctors or anything, but there are people that have no exposure tactically, and then all of a sudden they decide that today's the day that they're going to go out and start experiencing things. And try to be helpful, and then bad things happen because they know better, and all of a sudden they don't know any better, and they never will again, right? So stuff like that really does happen. So as he's going out there, like trying to talk to those guys, move your stuff, and clearly something bigger was happening there. Everybody in the movie could see it. Obviously, as outsiders, like, oh man, this guy's but something bad about to happen, right? But that. Stuff like that really does happen. People feel that whatever their job is, now is the time that they gotta go explore other options. They gotta, and I get it. He's got to know what these guys are seeing and doing. All right, but at the same time, hey, look, you got to be a realist. Mm-hmm. Pay attention, watch. Yeah. Don't be stepping out and interacting, doing And somebody should have reined him in, sir. That's not your job. Sit here, watch, observe, shut up, right? And nobody did that for that gentleman, and he paid the price, right? But yeah, people will step out of their comfort zones, and that guy had to pay for it because nobody reined him in. And but
that was one of the roughest parts of the movie for me. That scene with the boy, the body bomb scene, and I think it's one of the not the first time, but one of the first times we really see like the care that Renner's character has. I mean, obviously we see it when he's playing with the boy, he plays soccer with the boy, and then he gives him extra money and all that stuff. But I think it's such a great moment that later on we see that his character pays the price. So then when the other boy runs up to him, he's like, I have DVDs. He just ignores the boy. So he put himself out there for this kid, or not for this kid, but to acknowledge and to be a part of this kid's life. And he feels like responsible in a way, I think. Oh, yeah. And so he's on purpose going to avoid everyone from now on. Like it's almost like a see, you don't belong in anyone's life.
Wow.
Kind of a moment for him. And oh my gosh, like the moment he decides, you know what, we're not going to blow up this building. I'm going to disarm this thing, and I'm taking him out of here, kind of thing was a super powerful moment. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to ask you any questions about that, Justin, at all. And I just, but it's a great moment that you brought up in there that I just want to acknowledge.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was very powerful, because once again, they're a lot of what those guys do is they'll just demo a lot of stuff right in place. If as long as the collateral damage will not be too massive, a lot of times they'll demo a lot of stuff in place. But that was very, because I mean it was very genuine, because this boy deserves a lot more than what life has given him, and then just for somebody to do this with to have done that to a child, and then to be doing that to the body, not to have given it back to the family. And on top of that, I'm not sure, how familiar you guys are with Islam, but that was like desecration of the body, and that's like massive, that's a massive no-go. So yeah, no, that was a very impactful moment, especially for his character, and it was just, yeah.
Were there ever any moments in the film that you looked at that you thought, I can't believe they did such a good job at that?
Yes. After he rotates back, so when they're in the commissary, the grocery store.
Yeah, that's not a commissary.
Yeah. Well, but yeah.
Right.
So,
I know what you mean. Though. I thought it was funny. That was your first frame of reference, was to call it a commissary.
Yeah. So they're walking around, and they're, the wife is like, hey, get this, get that. And it was, how to put it? It's arbitrary. The arbitrary decisions. Get this box of cereal, get that. That's like, that is so like on target, on point. A lot of that stuff is it just seemed so arbitrary after coming home. Not just the grocery store shopping, but just small petty decisions when you like you take in so much of what happens on a day-to-day basis. The things that set people in motion. You're like, man, it's so arbitrary, so petty. It's a box of Cheerios. It's what are we doing for dinner? Just go get the Subway sandwich. Whatever. But just some of the arbitrary decisions we make day to day. That one, you go to a theater of operation like that. Obviously, a lot of those decisions are just completely taken out of loop. When you go to evening chow, evening mess, you're eating whatever they're giving you, right? So there's none of this. Well, what are we having for dinner tonight? You just go, you eat, you leave, right? How are you going to spend your payday money? Where the hell are you going to go? So many arbitrary decisions are taken away from your day-to-day life. And then when you return back, and it's like, well, get this versus get that. It's a box of cereal. It's full of sugar. It's one sugar versus another sugar. Who cares? And that's, I felt that was just so on target. And just how you, like, when you see him walking through the store, just like this is it. This is
that wide shot of the 100 cereals on the. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I like that, and I mean, it was interesting just trying to parse how he was feeling, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to actually be a question I wanted to ask, and because you could read it in a lot of ways. You can read it as he's kind of paralyzed from the overwhelming decisions in front of him, like there's, like Todd just said, there's 100 boxes, and they really emphasize it in a few of the shots, right? We open on this really wide, long shot of him at the other end of the aisle, and it's almost like he's, being attacked by cereal. And then he just kind of looks this way, and then he looks that way. And he doesn't roll his eyes, but you can feel he's feeling something, and it's just mixed and muddy, things happening all over his face as he just kind of resigns himself to grabbing a box. Like you said, it becomes this arbitrary, does it matter? Do I care? How could I possibly decide any of this? Like, let's just get it over with. Yeah.
It's a level of disconnection. It's these in the grand scheme of things, what do these decisions matter? They don't, one thing over the next. And that was very real. It felt very surreal seeing that. Even the first time when I saw it, when it came out, that felt more impactful than any of the other stuff in that movie. When they showed that, and matter of fact, me and my neighbor, he was there during the same time frame, and I told him, hey, look, man, my brother's doing this podcast. We're going to talk about the Hurt Locker, and that was the first thing he talked about.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just have such questions. It seems like, and tell me if these overlap at all, but it seems like there's either two different, or maybe it's a little bit of both. Guys and girls who go into the military to, like, some go into the military, I think because, like, it's just a path forward, right? It's like, okay, I'm out of high school. I don't know what to do, so I'm going to go do this. But if it's during a wartime, like in Iraq or something, it feels like Renner's character is a little bit less like, I'm going to take this because I don't want somebody else to take it, and more like, this is where I belong. And so what I'm getting at is that scene, right? So you mentioned, man, who cares about choosing cereal, right? And I get that, but I think you probably fall into this category. There's these guys and girls who go fight, not because, like, I want to, because I want to fight for your choice of cereal. It's because I want you to have the choice. I want everyone else to have the choice, to be able to have that arbitrary choice of cereal. Of course, when I get home, I don't give a shit about cereal. That's not why I'm fighting. I'm not fighting for the cereal. I'm fighting for you to have that choice. And so I guess my long question is, how is it there are two different types of people? I'm fighting for you to have that choice, or I just feel like I belong there. I want to just to be there, to be in the middle of craziness, to feel the rush, and there's a little bit of both.
I think that's exactly what the movie was trying to get people to really, I think it was one of the things that the movie was wanting people to think about, because right at the beginning, the quote, war is a drug, right? And yeah, it is. And I don't think necessarily war, but just the excitement, the adrenaline, that's why people skydive. That's why they do rappelling. They take on these extreme sports, because just that adrenaline is just, it's such a thing, right? Well, so that's part of it. Some folks are like that. They absolutely got to keep going for that next big rush. For his character, I think that's what they initially, it's all about spinning it that way. Oh man, this guy's just a junkie for the rush. I don't think that at all about Renner's character. I think he's just become so disconnected from where he started out, and obviously in life, having the family, the son, in by the end of it, he seems happier, but he feels like that's where he belongs, but only because that's where life is only starting to make sense for him again, because that's become the new norm. Things jive right for him there mentally, not because, this is just my thoughts. I don't think it's that he's looking for the rush. I just think that's mentally where focus comes back into play, where he feels normal, where he feels right, where I think that's where, not necessarily home is, but that's everything, he feels more balanced.
That I see that. That makes sense.
So I think it's interesting to look at him and his actions in another way, because I think everything you're talking about and everything you've said about him is accurate, right? That all plays, and I think that's right there, in line with everything you experience with him throughout the film. I think there's another layer that you can apply to it, rightly or wrongly, but I think the layer is there for close inspection, which is if you look at the opening scene where we meet Thompson and his bomb squad, right? And it's still Eldridge and Sanborn. And you immediately feel their camaraderie, right? They're all clicking together. It's all good vibes. There's jokes, right? And that's a team. They're very tight knit, even though you can hear Eldridge in the back sometimes asking stupid questions. Right. But they don't focus on that. They focus mostly on, all the good stuff happening. And even whenever he's in the middle of retreating from the bomb, like they start going on about Sanborn and Sons, right? The grass company, you know what we need? This place needs grass, right? And so you have all this happening, right? And then he spots a guy. He's got a cell phone, and ultimately he freezes, right? He's running, but he freezes in his decision-making capacity. He doesn't make the right call that ultimately leads to Thompson dying, right? And by the way, I love that it looks like the shockwave is what kills Thompson, not the blast itself in that the fire, the debris or whatever. I love that because it adds another layer of realism. Most films that an explosion happens, if the fire doesn't touch you, did it really hurt you? Like,
right.
Yeah, it does actually. That's not how that works. And just a great use of slow motion to, like Todd was saying at the opening before you hopped on, like you just feel it. You feel the kinetic energy. You feel, the details, the sand popping up off the ground and the rust rising off the car. Great use of slow motion there. You just drag out this terrible, terrible moment. And of course, I love that they cast Guy Pearce as Thompson, right? It lulls us into this sense of complacency, right? He's our lead. That's Guy Pearce. Yeah, we're safe. Everything's, oh no. And they even give him this moment right before he puts on the helmet. I'm craving a burger. Is that strange? Right? It's such a great human moment where, you just imagine what he's feeling and that he has a future ahead of him, right? Where he gets to eat a burger, right? It's just a very basic human element. Nope, we're going to kill him right now in front of your freaking face. And so you now know that we're in completely unpredictable waters. You are not safe here. This is not a safe place. And by contrast, it really sets up James and his tactics, because I think if you were to apply this layer of looking at what those good vibes bought Thompson was death, right? Whereas if you look at James frustrating his team, even though at some points, really bad tactics, it kept them all on their toes. It kept them edgy and ready to do what's necessary. I feel like I think there was some intention only because there's that moment before their second mission together when they're in the bathroom shaving up, and he's like, hey, Sanborn turns to him and he's like, we need to get some things straight. Like, that's not cool. That's not how we operate. And Sanborn's just like, oh, don't worry, man, you'll get it. Like, that's his whole conversation. And you're just like, wow, no, you don't get it, bro. But if you start, accumulating all these ideas of, well, what did like all that other stuff, these doing things by the book, or at least being on good terms with your teammates, what did that buy Thompson? It bought him death. And maybe by doing, something contrary and having conflict amongst ourselves will keep everybody on their toes. Even though, of course, it almost bought him a bomb in the field, right? Where he goes down to grab his gloves, and he has his team really thinking about, these things are finicky all the time, man. But I think if you were to just apply some good grace to his methodology and say there is a method to his madness, on top of, and maybe it's just a really good excuse to not connect and to be this disconnected human being, the shell of a person, for all those other reasons that y'all have been talking about. I think that's all true. Maybe it's a good excuse, but I think in his head, that's how he rationalizes it, is that I'm keeping everyone frosty. I'm going to come home, and I need them to be that way in order for me to have a shot at, because I think too, maybe his rationale of not sending in the bomb cart is the faster I get out there, the faster I can come out. Whereas if I end up having to go out there, I've lost 20 minutes of setup, and that 20 minutes I could have gone out there, disconnected the bomb, and completely deactivated the threat. And so, yeah, I think you could make a really strong argument for James having a very strategic rationalization for his methodology. I would ask too, so there's that moment towards the end whenever he goes on this hunt. Oh, this was leading me into a bigger point because you were talking about war as a drug. And so he goes and he leaves the base, right? He's upset because he misidentifies the body, right? He misidentifies Beckham's dead body, which is really... It makes sense. It's endemic to leaving your own culture and going to another, right? He's culturally blind. He doesn't pick up on facial differences in this people group in Iraqis. That's fine. That's not racist, because if I were to go, all three of us went to Asia, I'm sure there's a lot of people in Japan that would be like, yeah, you're Todd and you're Todd and you're Todd. Like, well, no, we're three different people. Like, we're just white with brown hair and it all looks the same to you. That's fine. That's endemic to, leaving your culture. And he, of course, misidentifies Beckham's body. And of course, the whole disarming the boy's body was really disgusting. But I also like that James has an understanding of the effects of war, right? He has this moment where he's at the very beginning, there's that crazy moment with the taxi cab driver, and he stops him with his pistol. And they have this really amazing dramatic moment where you can see he's taking it seriously, but he's also not looking to kill this guy. And of course, he ends up shooting the guy's windows out because the citizen is just frozen, right? And I don't know how that operates, to be in your own city and having a foreign invader there. Like, what does that do to me if suddenly, our Austin is filled up with Japanese soldiers? Like, you on the one hand get numb to it, on the other hand, so if there's soldiers on the side of the road, whatever, I need to get across town. And then he realizes suddenly that, oh, no, this was the wrong move. And at the end of the scene, though, James makes this crack, right? Well, if he wasn't an insurgent, he sure the hell is now. And I think he's making that's a writer's commentary about the effectiveness of war in another country, right? You create insurgencies and radicals in all kinds of ways. And sometimes it's one really bad moment that can turn someone from average Joe citizen to, we need to get these people out of here. And it happens in the blink of an eye. And he's making a commentary about that. But then towards the end of the film, he's out for blood, right? They killed Beckham. I think y'all said it really well. Like, this is my identity with home. It has become through this little boy, and it's my normalcy. And they stole my normalcy. And I'm going to get this bomber who thought not only he deserved to die, but decided to, desecrate his body in this way to attack me. And so he gets this DVD seller, this merchant who is Syrian. If you were to assume that he's just not a general flag fan of Syria, because that guy is actually rocking a Syrian flag in his car. So he's not even Iraqi, right? He's a Syrian guy, and he takes him hostage, has him take me to Beckham or take me to whatever. And this guy drops him at a random house. He's like, yeah, that's where you want. And he just burns out, which is a great play, right? I'm going to take him to a place where he has to scale a wall, and now I can get away. So
that's great.
And now James invades this house, and it's a professor inside who speaks like 30 languages. But James is looking for a bomber, right? The bomber that killed Beckham. And so on the one hand, you feel like, oh, this is the movie. This is our moment. We're going to get the bad guy. This is the guy that he's hunting. He's got all these, like, your first time watching this, you think that this is going somewhere. and that he's collecting all these
Feels
switches.
like a bad guy.
Right.
Yeah.
And so ultimately he's chased out of the house by the wife, and you're just like, oh, this isn't going anywhere until the scene after this where you think, oh, we're on to something again. And of course he's not. He's just, frustrated and looking to take out his frustration however he can. But that whole sequence feels to me symbolic of the war itself, right? Where you're wrongly invading someone's house, looking for something that isn't there, and ultimately, you're chased out, embarrassed, and humiliated. And I think this is where the opening quote really has the strongest effect, is in light of that idea, that concept, where war is a drug. And I think if I were to really apply that holistically, I would say America is addicted to war in the same way that an addict is addicted to drugs. Like, we just have this really, and you can peel back all the reasoning and logic behind that, because there's always good faith reasons, right? It's like we haven't learned from any of these other wars that we've been in the same way we went into Iraq, full of emotion and assumptions and blah, blah, blah. But I think if I were to apply like the underscored, very subtextual lesson that the movie is touching on, even if not like rubbing your face in it at all, I think and we talked about this before you hopped on, Justin, is that they do a great job of just kind of being. We're going to explore this one character and see how he feels and what's the day in a life like. And it's a bit of a character study. And within that, you can apply lessons and ideas about war itself and its impact on people, and largely how America fits into all of this. That's all there if you want it. And if not, that's okay too. You can still experience this movie without feeling politically maligned, which is nice. You don't usually get that in war films. Usually it's always finger wagging and like
good guys, bad guys. This is my message. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And that's one of my beefs with some films like American Sniper and Black Hawk Down. And those two are on one side where you're very much dehumanizing other people groups, like in just the worst way, from an American point of view. But then you also have it the other way, right? Kathryn Bigelow's follow-up was Zero Dark 30, which is a garbage film because it's all propaganda. Like, you got too close to your the CIA and your DOD advisors.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, and it's like, all right, you did one good thing, you couldn't let it go. you had to do it again. But that's a whole other bag of worms. Yeah, so I have a couple more questions for you that are much more, I don't know. There's a lot of hand signals, and so I'm curious if that is something that you train and like have classes on, or if it's something you just kind of pick up along the way. How much is that deliberated in your training?
So when you first go through training, they do teach you certain hand signals, get down, forward, stop, stuff like that. Right. But it's one of those things, unless you repetitively train on it, you eventually, like, there are many different hand signals. Right. You got, was it ceasefire, I think, is one of them. So like, if you don't continue to use them, you will absolutely forget. So there's a lot of different hand signals. Like how are you going to enter a room? You're gonna hook. You're gonna, like, there's all sorts of stuff. So if you don't use them, you will absolutely forget them. And so when they're like doing certain things, some of them, I'm sure some of them are absolutely made up for the movie, but there are some hand signals that are like truly legit, like, hey, we're going, get down, and yeah. Do
the signals differ between branches, military branches, or is it all out of the same playbook?
I'm sure there are going to be some differences, but they're, I could be wrong, but I'm sure the intent is as much of that needs to be universal as possible, because if you're going to at any point do a joint mission, a joint operation, you're going to want a lot of that stuff to be universal, because in the way back machine, a lot of things were not universal, and it created anarchy and havoc. So a lot of things started becoming universal in design. So that would probably be one of those things.
Whenever he comes back from that mission, his own little personal vendetta. He's re-entering the base, and that's a whole ordeal. Have you ever experienced anything like that, or seen, or what's your take on that?
As an MP,
oh, that's
you
true.
got people coming in. Yeah, you're gonna get the spotlight on you. And, in a situation like that, yeah, they're gonna hit you with the spotlight. They're gonna yell at you. They're gonna tell you get down, and they're gonna come up and they're gonna, probably search you and blah 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 blah. Right? You're gonna, and when he's like showing his badge, and when he's like, I ain't gonna lie, when he said I was coming from the whorehouse, there was probably some that was probably a realistic response. I'm gonna let you in if you tell me exactly where it's at. That was probably a moment of truth, because I could see one of my countrymen there for 8-9 months going, all right. So I could see that happening in that respect. However, coming in the middle of the night, if anyone snuck off the installation, they would probably try to go the exact same way that they left out. So I'm not gonna. We used to have these guys in curfew, or in Korea we had curfews, and so apparently some of my guys would, the housing outside of our fence line was so close they would jump over the fence and get out after curfew, or if they were creeping back in after curfew, they would jump over the wall of like these apartment complexes and get back into the camp. I'm like, what the hell good are these fences if you're building them very close? But yeah, so nice. Where there's a will, there's a way. And he came in, he would have, if he'd have come in running, he'd probably been shot versus come in hot, throwing his arms up. So he probably would have wanted to come in, arms thrown up, slow pace, talking. There would have been a challenge and password at some point, more than likely, like, hey, today's challenge and password. I don't know if it had been a post-wide thing, but anytime you're going out the fence line, there's certain procedures that are followed. In old school Army, there was a challenge and password. Hey, there's a challenge and password, and then a running challenge and password. So if you're running and something bad is happening right behind you, that you could just say a word, and then without question, you can keep running, and then whoever you're running past will start engaging.
Wow.
Oh, wow. And those are different.
Those would be different, yes. Because a challenge and password is, Uncle Bill sells jelly. And then somebody would come back with, I love jelly. Okay. It was always something stupid, like
the roosters in the hen house.
And Pepsi. Then they would say something, in response to it. And then where
you're right.
Right. And then the running password would just be, just something random, tuna fish, just some random catchphrase or something. And those are only good for like 1 or 2 days, and then you change them because you never know who's listening.
Oh, okay.
Nice. Well, that's all I got. Todd, I don't know if you have any final questions. This has gone about 50 minutes longer than I anticipated.
We're going to put it down to 4. So
yeah. Wes is a really good editor. So no, I just you answered a lot of my questions actually, and I think this is a much longer conversation as well than what we've got here. I have so many questions, to be honest. But about this movie, I think that you've shed a lot of light, and thank you very much for your service and for everything. I mean, honestly, and for your insight here.
Yeah, I'll leave you with this last thought. Where he's getting hammered and he puts on the EOD tech helmet. I will just say we all do drunk, stupid shit. So.
Okay.
When I saw that,
I wondered about that.
Okay. Yeah.
I wondered about that. I thought, is it just like, okay, does he just feel more comfortable in the helmet, or is he, is that just something stupid that he did because he was drunk?
Yeah, no, he's probably drunk. And
maybe no meaning.
All right, put the helmet on so when you flop over, you're not going to hurt yourself. I ain't gonna lie, I probably did a lot dumber stuff than that when I'm hammered, when I got gear around me. So yeah, no, because I wrote that down. Drunken helmet. We all do stupid shit. That's all I'm gonna say. That was my note.
I guess the last thing would be about the trinkets that he keeps, that he saves. Maybe that wasn't something that you did, but would that be something that, say a tech would, okay.
Oh, he's like turning around to grab.
grab a bunch of shit.
Like
That's perfect.
A bag of toes or something. What are you doing, man?
Oh my
I'll
gosh.
show people my toes. Those are for me, not for you. All right, no, here, I will show you all a couple things. All right, so I got, let me see here.
Got to be careful what you ask him, Todd.
Central Bank of Iraq.
Oh, what is that? 25,000?
Yeah, it's worth probably less than 10,000th of a cent.
Oh my gosh.
Something like that.
Not what the paper is printed on.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, the paper is way more valuable. And then what we got is Pogs. Okay, so that's a 25-cent piece. We didn't have quarters, nickels, and dimes. We had Pogs.
Oh, that's weird.
So we got different ones. And these, believe it or not, like this one's a 5-cent piece. These, when you rotate it back, you could take them to the PX, the commissary, the local military gas stations, and redeem them. Like if you, so people would rotate back, and I got like a stack of these. You know, they would take them, and everybody would throw their Pogs into like a bucket, and then they would go buy like 6 packs, cases of beer with however many Pogs they had.
Whoa.
So
Awesome.
I did not.
That's
I kept
super
my
cool. I
Pogs.
did not know that.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
That's super cool. Thank you so much, Justin. It's been awesome.
Oh, well, glad to be here. I'm a mere servant to the Pestle, so if you guys ever need anything, y'all give me a holler.
All right, man. Thanks a lot, bro. If you want to hop off, man, I really appreciate you making the time.
No, not a problem. Not a problem. Thank you for having me, and y'all have a great day.
Later, buddy.
You too.
All right.
That was awesome,
Yeah,
man. I love you, brother.
Funny dude, man. Nice. So I'll run through a few more things. Again, this is like, oh my God. I'm sure you got a bike ride coming up here in like 90 seconds. And so
Me, no, I'm
oh, that's right. You're in Austin.
in
I
the
keep
house.
forgetting.
I'm 10 minutes away
That's
from you.
right. Okay, good. So the last few notes here on the title, I thought it was a great title. One of the things I really loved about it was that it works in a lot of layers. Right on the front, just on the surface, it's a very machismo thing, right? Put him in the hurt locker kind of thing, right? Take him to the woodshed. And so there's this very on its face meaning that you can kind of derive from it about delivery of pain. But there's also kind of a subtle hint of emotional symbolism, right? Locker itself sounds kind of tough, a la, locker room, sports, physicality, but hurt also sounds softer, emotional. So a hurt locker, I think, also reflects the inner turmoil, maybe referencing like PTSD and just kind of the stuff that, you go through and the stuff that you hide away from the world as a result of this experience. And then on top of that, I also think it reflects the nature of a bomb, right? A bomb being this cage of pain, right? So a hurt locker is like you're waiting to explode and inflict its devastation on everyone. So I think all those things kind of play in harmony with the subject of the film, and just a really good, turn of phrase that I wouldn't have expected.
And in the movie itself, like war itself.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's right. And I love, there's so many unique and memorable scenarios that we bounce through, right? And I think that's just such a great way to structure a film. Plot out every interesting idea for a war film tackling bombs, and then lay them out in a way to reveal character and kind of orient the audience. And they just did just an incredible job. And I love that we don't spend time fretting over which wire to cut, right? It's a movie about bombs, and never once are we talking about the red or the green wire, right? He just does his job. The tension of a bomb going off is, that's going to explode is ever present. We don't really need to dramatize any further. Like that's it. We're good. We can just go. And I love that, all the extra tension really comes from his relationship with the squad and relationships with the Iraqi citizens. And, so we have all these scenes, right? The bomb that's tethered to a bunch of other bombs, right? The daisy chain that Justin was talking about, right? He pulls the wire and reveals all these buried bombs. That's such a visually striking or memorable thing. Like same as you, man. When I saw that the first time, like my breath stopped, and I've never forgotten that scene ever since. Anytime I think of this movie, that's usually the first thing that I think of, is that him standing around all these bombs, and it's just a very helpless thing. The car bomb at the UN is super memorable, right? You have this bomb in a car trunk. The car gets lit on fire. Now he has to extinguish it, and then he has to like pull the car apart to disarm it. And he's throwing off his headphones. Like that's such a strong visual and memorable moment. And then I also really like the wipers coming on, his reaction to it. He's like, interesting. And I love it because it's really good tension through frustrating the audience, right? We're hearing this scratching noise, and it's making us feel all kinds of things. It's making you pay attention. And what I like about that especially is it's so much better than these other forms of irritating the audience, because normally what films and TV shows do is knocking. They start knocking and they don't stop knocking, or the phone is ringing and the phone just is loud, and the person is waking up and he doesn't want to answer it, and he smokes a cigarette instead. And then finally, after 30 seconds of nonstop ringing and knocking, they get to it. And it's so, if it's 2020 and you're still doing that, you might be a bad filmmaker. Like, stop it. That's so annoying, and it's so derivative. Like, I could understand 80s, 90s, even 2000s kind of playing that card. But if you're still doing that, grow up. Like, you're just annoying me at this point, and you're pulling me out of the film. You have the sniper scene. That's super memorable and distinct. You have the body bomb, which I honestly forget. I don't know if I just wipe it out of my memory every time because it's so disturbing. But once you're there, it makes an impact. But yeah, every time I forget that that's in this movie. Even whenever I see it, I'm like, is that part of this movie? It's just literally like I've never seen that before every time. And I've seen this, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. And then the missed IED right after, and then the tension that's all built up from the opening scene. And I laid all that out earlier. But I love Sergeant James. I love putting him in all these situations and seeing how he reacts, how he responds, how he gets his team involved or not involved. And maybe the best one, Justin brought up like the juice box, and that's such an important scene because it shows that maybe he's not selfish, that he actually is team first, right? I'm going to take care of my guy, and my guy is going to take care of everybody. That's what's important. And also love that moment where Eldridge opens fire, because Eldridge is asking James, hey, there's a guy over here. Should I fire? It's your call, buddy. And he decides, shoots, and we hear James whisper to himself, good job. Like, yes, that was the right call. You did what was necessary. And so you can see him enabling his team to make their own decisions for everybody. Like, the good of his unit is for everybody to be sharp and make hard decisions. And then we see how he reacts in a no-win situation, right? The suicide bomber at the end, that clip that we played at the start of this episode. That's finally, he's in a scenario that he cannot control, that he cannot come out getting what he wants. And I love seeing him wrestle with that, because you start to wonder, is he going to die with this guy? Because up to this point, you just don't know where his line is. What is his limit? And he finally, and I love that he's apologizing to a guy that willingly strapped on this bomb. That is the impression you get. Like, he changed his mind, but he also made that decision. And he's apologizing to this guy that he can't help him. So you get a really strong sense of his commitment and his bigger emotional, life going on inside.
And if I could add to that, it's
Please.
really important because the whole time you're thinking, does this guy just want to die? Does he even care? It's kind of like, everybody asks Alex Honnold, the guy who free soloed El Cap, do you just want to die? No, he doesn't want to die, right? But this is all he knows. This is his world, his life. And so he makes that decision to not die with the guy. I'm not, and he runs away and he lets the guy die. But I think that was super important for us to see him choose not to die via being blown up.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. And then trying to find, and I touched on this a little bit. I'll go into a little more detail briefly. Is there any rhyme or reason to who dies or doesn't die? On the one hand, you could make a case that indiscriminate destruction is not rewarded or is punished, right? Thompson said, like I said, he's going to blow up the roads. If they want to lay bombs down, we'll blow up your roads. He wasn't worried about the destruction that he was causing, and he dies. The contractors, right? Those bounty hunters that they run into on their way back from detonating all the unexploded ordnance. The wrench man, right? The guy who we used up our wrench. How do you use up a wrench? We threw it at a guy. It's like, oh, you can use guns, right? Well, that guy, the wrench man, he's the first to die. He gets shot. He dies, ostensibly because he threw someone for a wrench at someone. If you're trying to find the moral underpinnings of who dies and why, and then of course the bounty hunter, Ray Fiennes, his character, the lead contractor, he kills his bounty, right? He sees him running away. He sprints out. He's like, that's 500,000 quid to me. And he mows him down without a second thought and runs back excited, right? I forgot, it's dead or alive. And then of course he immediately gets one through the chest himself. And then maybe is Dr. Cambridge's naivete, is that punished? And he walks out and he's very, I don't know. I mean, hearing the way Justin was talking about it, it's like, this guy thought he knew what he was doing. He didn't. He should have known better. And someone should have grabbed him. No one did. And maybe that is, you can't be that way also in a war zone. Because Eldridge convinced Cambridge to leave safety, right? Come across the wire and experience what I experience. But ultimately Eldridge fails to protect him. And I love that Cambridge dies by an IED. He didn't get shot. He died by an IED, which is the very thing Eldridge is trained to handle. Like, that's his job. That's his responsibility. And that's what ultimately gets killed. And so that feels emblematic of Eldridge, his responsibilities. And I don't know, the rhyme or reason, like he convinced someone to step out of their duty. And there was a penalty to that. And of course, the same thing happens to Eldridge as well, right? You have James, who convinces or orders actually everyone to come out and go hunting for a bomber, right? Down dark alleys. And ultimately it almost gets Eldridge killed, but it gets him shot by James. And that whole exchange in the chopper is hilarious. Like, he's just chewing him out.
It's so good.
And then Sanborn's like, take care. And he immediately puts on this big happy face. Hey, come back safe, man. Take care of yourself.
So good.
It's so good. Yeah. And then of course the suicide bomber doesn't escape either. So it's not like everyone gets spared, but maybe there's some moral reason why the people who get hurt or die is there, or maybe not. Maybe that's just war. And at the end of the day, people just die in war. And if you try to attach moral reasoning to it, you're going to miss the bigger picture, which is that war kills everyone indiscriminately. Whether you're reckless like James, or whether you just step out one time, it doesn't really matter. And that's just the nature of war, which I think is the more realistic, underpinning that.
Yeah. I like your points about all of them, but I think that's probably it. That's probably the main thing.
Yeah.
War gives no reasons. No.
It really doesn't. Yeah. And so that's pretty much all I have, man. I don't know if you have any final thoughts before we move into recommendations, but by all means.
Not that I hadn't shared. I mean, like I said before, I loved it. And a lot of the reason is what you said earlier, that it doesn't really pick a side. Going back to what you just said, there's no rhyme or reason necessarily for war, and who people die, or what people die and why. And I think it does a good job of calling that out, but keeping you stressed the whole time and doing things like showing you Ray Fiennes and then killing him, that make you uneasy about all the characters throughout the whole thing. So when you have this maverick, you're thinking, oh my gosh, he could get everybody killed. And that could actually happen in this film because there's no real rules for it.
Wow.
So anyway, yeah, it's amazing. I thought it was a fantastic film.
So good. What are you going to recommend this week?
One that I can't believe that I hadn't recommended before, to be honest. I'm going to recommend Full Metal Jacket, which I remember when I was younger watching, and it really having an effect on me. Not wanting to go into the military, to be honest. And it's a Stanley Kubrick film, I believe, and it's just unbelievably well written and acted, and there are a lot of ad libs in there that were not part of the script. And I think that anytime you hear stuff like that, it's always really interesting to go and try to pick those out, right? So yeah, definitely a seminal film for me.
Nice, good recommendation. Like Kubrick at his best, and that was a film I grew up on for sure. My dad and would like to watch it and talk about this and that, and so that was probably one of my first war films, like pure war films that I saw as a kid. Nice, good reco. I'm gonna recommend. So we just watched a film about death and murder and all kinds of like really dark stuff, but you don't necessarily have to be overseas to experience death and loss and tragedy. I had a friend recently who had a miscarriage, and that's profoundly difficult. So there's a book by Elizabeth McCracken where she discusses her own miscarriage, and it's a beautiful story. If you've ever, I don't know, if you're a guy like us, we can't ever really know what that's like. You can't really ever experience it. So she wrote this book, and it's unbelievable. It's so powerful. And it's called An Exact Replica of a Figment of My Imagination. It's worth it. Go read it if you ever want to just have an inkling of an idea. So good. So that's apparently as much as I can get out.
That's okay. Wow. Amazing.
Stay tuned. Oh, that's right. Next week, we're taking a listener request. Shout out to you who sent us an email and heard our conversation at the end of Aliens, I think, or at the end of A Girl with a Dragon Tattoo. And he was like, oh, man, I'd love to hear y'all, discuss the scene in A Ghost Story. And so we have, I don't know, we had a fun experience watching that movie for the first time. And we'll talk about that a little bit. So stay tuned next week. We're going to cover A Ghost Story. So don't forget, if you're enjoying the show, if you have not left us a review, don't forget, subscribe, review, drop us a note. If you want to talk about something on this episode, set the story straight, like what it's really like out there in the bush or whatever. Like if you want to drop your own experience or comment about the film, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/The Hurt Locker.
And today's quote of the day is from General Patton. Who else, right? Moral courage is the most valuable and usually the most absent characteristic in men. I think that's just it's an amazing quote. And I think that quotes like this from a military general go a long way, because if you think about it, it's hard for me to say anything about it because I haven't been in the military, but in the military, you have orders. In the military, you are just told, do this. But hearing something from like this from a 5-star general, 4-star general, about moral courage is sometimes moral courage might go against your orders. What do you do, right? And so it's actually wonderful to hear a general say something like that. I don't think he's saying disobey orders,
right.
But I do think that there is every man has a line, right? And you have to, it's your duty as a human being to know what your line is, right? And I think that war pushes that boundary more than anything else. That's an amazing quote. Great find here.
Yeah. And it's funny. I don't know if Patton was actually a good or a bad general. I think there's a mixture of views on him. I have zero idea. Much like you, I've never served, and let alone have any kind of understanding of military tactics. I know like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what my brothers know. But I do love that idea of addressing, the moral courage is highly valuable. And like you just said, like hearing that from a general is really good to hear, because moral courage never is easy, right? If you're in the face of a really hard decision, to invoke the most obvious thing in the world, right? Nazis were told to follow orders, and they did, and that was no excuse for doing the right thing, right? That doing the right thing does not always mean following orders. And it's always easier in hindsight, because all of us now say, yeah, of course I wouldn't have, if I had been there, I would have done X, Y, Z. Yeah, maybe. And you would also realize that it's going to cost you your life to do that in certain circumstances. Doing the right thing is never easy or simple. It's always going to come at a price. And if you apply that to modern, issues going around in the world, like I can't imagine, being in whatever Gitmo, being told to waterboard someone. Like, do you follow an order, or do you follow your conscience and do the right thing? Because torture is illegal. It doesn't matter where it takes place. And so one way or another, you're gonna break something. And so I don't envy the people placed in those circumstances. And ultimately, this is why I have so much issue with our executive branch. But that's a conversation probably for never on this show, but certainly another day.
It's a totally different podcast.
Yeah, different podcast. Nice. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Wes, thanks for putting this together with your brother. I really enjoyed talking to him, and would love to talk to him more off the air for sure. Got a lot of questions. But thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for bearing with us through our audio issues. A little shout out there. Make sure that your audio is good on a podcast. This is what it's like when it's not. Yeah, this is what you get. Make sure you join us next week. We'll be covering a ghost story. Very looking forward to that a lot. And as Wes said earlier, make sure to subscribe, review us on iTunes, wherever you get your podcast, and share us with your friends. It goes a long way. It really does. And until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.